Right, where's Adam? Adam, are you ready?
Good evening, councillors. Welcome to this meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed, and in the event of any technical difficulty, the meeting will be recorded and uploaded after it concludes, making it available for viewing the following day. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
Councillor Huntman.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Members, do you have any declarations to declare? Agenda item 3, the minutes. Are the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of July 25 agreed?
Sorry, can I make a comment on the minutes?
Yes, carry on, Councillor.
Thank you. Under page 3, item 83, third paragraph down, it talks about the independent person requested that future reports include the assurance rating alongside audit details to help members focus on partial or limited assurance areas. Could we ensure that that is happening going forward, please?
Noted, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if I could raise that we had asked for the work programme to be included on every agenda going forward, and it isn't in the agenda for this meeting. It just helps with us pulling items forward and back. So we had the agenda, the work programme last meeting to look at, but it's not on the agenda for this meeting for some reason.
Thank you, that'll be noted, thank you. Any further questions on the minutes? Thank you. Agenda item 4. I propose that we move this and start with item number 5, as the person to present that is not here at the moment. They're on the way, stuck in traffic. Could I have a seconder to move that one, please? Councillor Bredding, thank you. Agenda item 5, internal audit, quarterly progress report. Mr. Barnes, would you please introduce the report on progress made in delivering 2025-26 internal audit strategy? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, as at the March meeting, the committee approved our proposed audit plan of work, and that was agreed, and that will contribute to the assurances that the committee receive about the effectiveness of the council's arrangements, and that in turn will help the committee to be informed and to provide assurance about the annual governance statement that will be drafted in respect of the current financial year when we get to next spring. So this item is our regular report to the committee, outline the progress we've made in delivering that plan. Excuse me. Appendix 1 to the report provides a status update on each of the pieces of work in the plan, but we will keep the plan under review in accordance with any resource demands the council needs of the audit team to address the challenges posed by both local government reorganisation and any other issues that arise as the year progresses. At section 5 of the report, we've set out that our previously disappointing level of sickness absence has much improved, which is good news. And that's as a result of the changes to the staffing of the team. So we've got a better level of performance in respect of attendance so far in 25-26. The audit work is progressing, and about a third of the planned audits are completed, although with reports to be agreed and other audits underway. I'm working with the audit manager and management in the organisation to get those works completed. A further third at an early stage in the process, with resources arranged and in place to deliver the final third of the plan for the year. It would be nice to fully finalise some of the work at this point, but overall we're broadly where we'd expect to be at this point of the year, working towards our annual report in July next year. As I previously discussed with the committee, we're finding it tough to find suitable staff for the team, and there have been no further changes to the staffing since we met in July. Also, no further audits have been completed since we last met in July, in time for publication of papers for tonight, but the Cybersecurity Incident Management Follow-up Report has now been agreed with management, concluding that the actions have been substantially implemented. That and other fully completed work will be reported to the next meeting of the committee. That's all I really wanted to say, Chair, but happy to take any questions members may have.
Members, do you have any questions? Councillor Brilling.
Thank you. Sorry. Under the internal audit report that we have, page 5 showed complaints. This was brought forward and is still listed as work in progress. That was listed as work in progress at the last meeting. Do we have a timeline for when this work will be active? Although this is listed as a low fraud risk, it does appear to be making little progress.
It is progressing, but it has taken longer than I've anticipated. That's been delivered internally by a member of staff in the team, and there's different conflicting pieces of work they're trying to address, so that piece of work is still ongoing. Hopefully, we'll get it completed in time for the November meeting, but I'm not going to promise that sat here right now.
Councillor.
Monitored, and do we have a theme going on? Is there more complaints of one type than the other, or is it just general complaints?
You take it.
Councillor, they are monitored. There is a complaints process in place. I am working with Andrew's member of staff to complete that audit. We do have a policy on complaints, and we do keep records of all complaints coming through.
Is it more residents? Obviously, it's all residents' complaints.
Yes, mainly residents, tenants, anyone who works, lives in the borough.
I think it'd be nice if we could actually have a visibility of them to see if we could help in some ways. We're out there with the residents.
It's not really a matter for it's not appropriate.
Sorry, Chair, through you. Just to provide assurance to the committee, you'll recall a few meetings ago that you signed off the annual report of the housing complaints, and so that comes to this committee on a regular basis. And the aspiration is that we will follow the same rhythm in relation to corporate complaints. And the part of the analysis that we do around our complaints on an annual basis is that feedback loop that you've alluded to. In other words, have we identified themes? What learning have we taken from that? And what additional steps have we put in place to address those particular issues? So that piece of work is ongoing. The guidance from the local government social care ombudsman and the housing ombudsman has been recently refined, so those have been brought together in a single unified policy for Castle Point, which enables us to effectively compare like with like, and that will give us a better and more comprehensive set of results as we move towards the end of the financial year.
Ms Mills.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a few questions, if you don't mind, Mr. Barnes. In relation to the audits, I know that you've given us an update on one of them that has now been finalised, but I think there were a couple that were with management for comment and then a couple with yourselves for review. Have they now been through that all of them been through that process and been finalised, or are they still at that stage?
No, that work is still ongoing to get it finalised.
Thank you. And then if you don't mind, Chair, are you able to comment at all on the level of assurances for those audits that have been completed but are yet to be reported on? Are you able to give us a feel as to whether or not they're okay or not? Thank you.
I can give you a feel if you like. So the first one I think is in respect of sheltered housing, where we've done that piece of work because there were sort of concerns that needed to be improved. So, and I think the conclusion coming from the audit will be that is the case, and there is scope for improvement in how that's working. But management are well engaged with that, and that is something that they'll be keen to progress once we finish the report. On the environmental health piece of work, I think that's likely to come through as quite a good report. Actually, the findings are not massively important, no, high level, and overall that team is working well. And the final one, I think, is the housing improvement programme, where there's been delays, I think, with agreeing that the kind of the memo arising from that with management, but it's fair to say that they've actually been dealing with the issues that were rising. So they've been focusing on actually tackling the issues rather than necessarily agreeing our report. So, and I would say that's actually more important personally. So I think they are getting on with the things that we alluded to in that memo.
Lovely, thank you. And through you, Chair, is there anything of particular concern in terms of governance, risk, or internal control from the work that you've been doing that you feel you need to escalate and highlight to the Audit Committee at this time at all, outside your normal reporting?
Not in respect of those particular issues. I mean, these are their service improvement opportunities, but I think that's usually the case. And, when you shine the lens on something, you can usually find something that can be improved. But in terms of those fundamental things, then no.
That's really pleasing to hear. Thank you very much. And then if you don't indulge me, Chair, just one last question. I notice in the report that there isn't anything on terms of progress of audit recommendations, and prior to the meeting, members were discussing about getting assurance over the fact that recommendations are being implemented and progressed well. And I know that when we spoke at the last meeting, when we had a specific report on that, the Chief Executive commented that there might be a number of areas that might have been superseded and things had moved on. So I wondered if a piece of work had yet been done on looking at that to close off those that are no longer relevant or had been superseded, and whether you're able to give us any sort of flavour in terms of whether or not the recommendations that remain are being progressed, and give us assurance that management are dealing with the actions, or is that something that we're going to get in a report at the next meeting?
So I think the work programme that you referred to earlier, I think showed when that was scheduled to be coming to the committee. So I think that wasn't due to come to this particular meeting. In respect of the potentially older items, I've been discussing that with certain directors around the organisation that are keen to progress that and remove those particular things and explain what they've done differently, which has moved the organisation forward. And now all the recommendations are on the IdeaGen system, so management are being regularly prompted to update those. To be honest, there's some managers that are very on that and some managers that we need to kind of keep prodding. But yeah, that arrangement is now in place, so that kind of is starting to embed itself as a process. And regular reminders are going out to managers that they need to do that. And then that will form the basis of the report that you get at the I think it's the next meeting on the work programme.
Councillor Dearson.
I think I'm probably following on from your point. Sorry, Chair, through the Chair. I think I'm probably following on from your point. But I think my concern is that at the last meeting in May, we had 124 actions in imaging. Only 37 of them were complete, and 24 are not yet started. But I've got no line of sight now as to how far forward we've moved on that. So I wonder if I could just ask for the next meeting, could we have an update on where we are with all of the items that have already been raised by you from your audits, and where those actions items are, how many are still outstanding from last year, and what's the expectation of when these might be closed off by the various businesses? Because I have a concern that the business are still not taking this, are taking this too lightly and trying to close off their items unless there's an internal issue as to why these items can't be closed off.
So I think, as I said earlier, I think the work programme scheduled when you were expecting to get that information, and that wasn't due to come to this meeting. So I think you need to work to that work programme through the year so you get the overall assurance throughout the course of the year. In respect of your concerns, I think that's probably warranted a while ago, but I can say that a lot of action's been taken internally to prompt and use that idea gen system to keep managers progressing the recommendations and keeping that updated in respect of the actions they're taking. So that should hopefully come through in the next report that you do receive, which should be to the next meeting, I believe.
I understand that, but we brought forward 18 items from last year. So if we're bringing forward items from last year, what's the chances of completing the 30 items this year if we're having to bring forward items from last year?
So, sorry, you're talking about the audit plan now rather than the recommendations?
Some of those are things that were completed. So some of those items are shown as being completed yet brought forward.
There's nothing that's shown as completed that's been brought forward. That was the point I was just making in my introduction, that we haven't managed to complete anything so far.
Well, fire safety says completed in November 2024. It's brought forward.
Which page is that on, Councillor?
That's on the May 2025 one. Fire safety completed in 2024. Terms of reference with the service. No, terms of reference with the service.
That's not in tonight's papers, Councillor. I can't see what you're referring to.
Yes, May 20. Yeah. Yes.
Mr. Barnes, I think he's my colleague here is referring to commentary that was in the papers previously, and comparing them to the papers tonight. And on the previous papers, it said that it had been completed in 2020, November 24, and then on these papers, it says terms of references being reviewed. Is it terms of reference being reviewed, you said?
Terms of reference
with the service. So I don't know if that's a follow-up audit, Mr. Barnes, and that it's you're agreeing the terms of reference to follow up an audit that had been completed to make sure the actions are...
Thank you, Mrs. Mills. Yes, you've made that clear to me now, yes. So,
that may be the case.
So, yes, so originally a piece of work was done, which was completed in November 24, and there were actions arising from that. So now, that was in 24-25 audit plan and the work we did for 24-25. Now in 25-26, we're going to come along and check that those recommendations have been implemented, and then you'll get a report from us to say yes or no, those recommendations have been implemented. So it's a follow-up piece of work, which is why it's under the heading implementing action plans in tonight's paper.
Thank you.
Councillor Briding.
Thank you, Chair. Can you tell us what level of assurance would require a follow-up audit?
So we have 4 levels of assurance, and the bottom 2 are minimal assurance and partial assurance. And for both of those bottom 2 categories, we then undertake a follow-up implementing actions piece of work to confirm the recommendations arising from that have been implemented.
Can I ask a supplementary on that, please? Going through the paperwork and comparing the audit plan to the one we had previously, there were a few items that were on the previous plan that had either partial or minimal assurance that are not included in this current plan. So does that mean they're going to be followed up at a later?
They should be. If you could highlight this to me after the meeting, that would be very useful to me. Thank you.
Councillor Dearson.
Sorry, me again. I don't know if this is. Hopefully, this is valid. In the last year's plan, we had Treasury management and the general ledger, but they haven't been brought forward into this year's plan for 25-26. Yeah, in the plan for last year, it just says that that it's in process. So I don't know what the action items are, whether they've all been closed off or. So I wondered if you could just give us an update as to why they're not included in this, bearing in mind that they could have a significant impact on our financial statement.
Yeah, I believe those two items were completed during the course of the year. I think the general ledger was reported to the July meeting, and I think the Treasury management was reported to the meeting before that. So they were completed at that point. And just from memory, I think both of them were satisfactory assurance, so there wasn't a follow-up due, but we'll check that out.
Was it? All right, okay, yeah, sorry. It's just that in the May status at 23rd of May says the draft report being discussed with the business, so.
That was back in May, so it was concluded between May and now, and so.
Any further questions, councillors?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I've just got one other question, and that is, it would be very useful if we could add the extra column on dates, which we have asked in the past. So really, we know that you're doing the audit, and just, if you like, when it was completed or the date that the partial assurance was received by you, so that we can actually see it clearly.
We did include that in the annual report, and once the next ones are completed, I will continue to do that, so you should be able to see that, yes.
Councillor Dearson.
Sorry. Under the aims, we've got damp mould and condensation to assess the council's arrangements for identifying mould in the property stock. Is that property stock for housing, or is that property stock for housing and corporate?
That will be the focus of that will be on the housing stock.
So are we confident that there's no issues in the corporate stock?
I'm not. There are condition surveys been undertaken which will allude to that. But the point of this piece of work is to assess the arrangements the council's got in place to identify and manage the damp mould and condensation issue.
And can I assume then that this work is just to check, because I know that the housing is fully compliant with AWAB's law, which comes into effect in October of this year. We have a new policy in place and a contract with one of the best providers in the industry to deal with any cases, and this is being tested recently, and the contract runs for 2 to 3 years. So can I assume that the work that you're going to be doing is just to check that those contractors are performing the tasks that we've employed them to do? Is that correct?
Pretty much, yes. The work that we're going to do is to assess the council's management of that and how that process is all working, so that you've got the assurance from us independently that what you're being told is accurate and you can rely on that.
Chair, if I may add, AWAB's law applies to residential properties only, so this is not an audit we would take in respect of corporate stock. It is entirely AWAB's law comes in next month, so it's a future state readiness. So this is the work that's being done by the Housing Improvement Programme, and as Mr. Barnes says, the whole point of checking this through an internal audit is to make sure that the things that we've put in place are actually working, and that our compliance with AWAB's law is on point. So that is exactly how this internal audit process is intended to work, to essentially mark the homework and check and provide additional assurance to members. So you have the Housing Improvement Programme board, which will gain assurance directly from the team, and this is your ability through this committee to ensure and gain assurance that work is in fact actually happening.
Thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
I'm just digging into the ICT strategy a little. It's assessing the suitability of the ICT strategy and effectiveness of application, etc., etc. And it says phase one's complete in February. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that works? Is this a paper exercise, or are you actually talking to system users about suitability of the systems, etc.?
So that the first piece of work was about the kind of the structure and the content of the actual strategy that was being, as it was being developed, and what that was then landed and approved. The second piece of work is going to focus more on that kind of thing in terms of, are we then implementing the strategy that we put in place? Is it delivering what we expect it to deliver as a council? But that work's not yet happening.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dearson.
Sorry, it's just an observation really. There were 18 items brought forward, but on this report it only highlights that 7 were actually brought forward. Is it possible to update the other items we've brought forward?
Can we pick that up outside?
Yes, we can, absolutely, certainly.
You need to know what those 18 items you think are brought forward.
Yeah, it's not criticism, it's just an observation.
Well, I need to make sure we've got our stuff right as well. So
yeah, I'll check you after. Thank you.
Councillors, any further questions? Is the report received? Thank you. Now we will go back to agenda item 4, Treasury Management Update, first quarter stage. Ms Cox, would you introduce your report providing an update on the Council's Treasury Management and investment activity, please?
Thank you, Chair. So this report summarises the Treasury activity from quarter 1 of 2025-26. With regards to our borrowing, we've made a planned instalment repayment of the general fund borrowing, and we've not taken on any new borrowing. Our levels of borrowing are below our authorised and operational boundary limits that we set as part of the Treasury strategy, which is where they should be. With regard to interest, the interest payable is in line with budget because we have fixed rate investments, and therefore we should accurately be able to predict how much we should be paying in interest. With regard to investments, our level has decreased due to a large capital payment in the first quarter. And equally, our investment income has also increased due to a retained higher level of interest rates. However, those interest rates are looking to be decreasing over the remainder of the year. I'm happy to take any other questions.
Members, do you have any questions? Ms Mills?
Thank you very much, Chair. First is really just a point to sort of note, really, that we're sort of pleased to receive the assurances that are within this report, and that as a result of the more favourable interest returns, that the Council has taken the step to revise the budget for the interest return, which shows good financial management on this particular item and area. So that's really pleasing to note. So thank you for that, and thank you for the report. I had a question in terms of more of interest and regarding due diligence is around, I think the report talks about us having some local authority investments where we've lent or invested money with other local authorities. I just wondered if you're able to tell us who those are and what due diligence was done when those investments were made.
Right, in terms of who they are, I haven't got the names directly in front of me. I'll have to come back to you on that. I'm just double checking, bear with me. Yeah, so in terms of, I'll have to also come back to you because in terms of the investments that were made with local authorities, I wasn't here at the time to be able to tell you what was gone through with that, so I'll have to sort of bring that back to you. I do apologise for that.
Any further questions, Councillors? Councillor Dearson?
To reiterate, that's a great report which has been produced. I suppose the only question I have is that the Bank of England, and it's more of just knowledge share for me really, but the Bank of England suggests rates around 3.9, 4.5% going forward. Inflation's at, we put in the report that expectation is around inflation at 2%, although the likelihood is that will be a lot higher as at year end. And I know that Brent Council have set a strategy of around about 3.9% for their investments. And we're indicating a number of 1.2 million for what our expectation is. I just wondered what average balance. I know we've had numbers around 29 million to 26 million. And I know in the report you mentioned that you might possibly look to move to 12 months rather than what your current strategy is. So I'm just wondering, is that 12-month thought pattern around the fact that we might be able to fix rates above that 3.9% to be able to get to the 1.2 million, or is the 1.2 million based on our expectation that rates will be around 4%?
The budget is set around our expectation of maintaining balances and looking at our forecast interest rate. So currently the forecast doesn't anticipate locking in for 12 months.
Okay, thank you. But what do we see as the interest rates, our expectation in interest rates to get to 1.2 million?
Again, I'll have to come back with you in terms of what's built into our budget estimation on that. So,
Councillor Broding.
Thank you, Chair. I just have one question, really, very simple. On page 2, paragraph 5.1, the very last sentence, it says, "It is, however, anticipated that further borrowing may be required later in the financial year." Can you elaborate further on this and why you anticipate further borrowing?
So when we set our capital programme, obviously the capital programme needs to be funded, and we've got limited reserves available to fund the capital programme. And therefore the only other option would be for us to borrow to fund those items. So as we come along and we review our capital programme, and when we set our capital programme, part of our expectation on that would be looking at how that's going to be funded. And if we have a shortfall, we'll be looking to borrow to cover those items. When we come and we incur some of that expenditure, our first port of call would always be to look to use the money that we have available in reserves, if there is sufficient money available. But if not sufficient, then the only other option would be for us to borrow. But that would be also done on a project-by-project basis. So if someone was to come with a new large project and we don't have money aside to be able to fund that, then we would need to be looking to borrow in order to move that project forward.
Councillor Broding.
Thank you. Can I just ask then, is that really just an overall caveat that you may need to require further borrowing, not that at this particular time you actually envisage the need for further borrowing?
I will need to refer back to the capital programme to see what we actually had planned for the year. If we've put in the capital programme, if we are intending on borrowing within the capital programme, then there's a high likelihood we will need to borrow in the year. But there is also a caveat element in order for us to be able to progress things, that borrowing would be highly likely.
Any further questions, councillors? Okay. I will move the recommendation set out of paragraph 3.1 of the report. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Dearson, thank you. Is that agreed, members? Agreed, thank you. Councillors, Mr. Kleinberg has been unable to join us for reasons I'm not sure of, but I propose to defer the counter fraud investigation report until the next meeting. Is that agreed with you? Thank you. Members, that concludes the business for this meeting. The meeting is closed at 7:36. 8:36. Thank you for your attendance.